Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene, episode 346. Today's date is July 17, 2022. New. In June, there was a cyber attack on YouTube. My equipment went away. My channel went away. This is a new channel. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share. Some of the things we'll be covering today. Nukes in New Jersey. U.S. Embassy closing in Kiev, Ukraine. Shaking going on in Cascadia. And August. And some of my sources are God in the Bible, Patriot subscribers, W77, Dr. William Mount, Alexander Mercouris, A Military Summary, Duran, Israeli News Live, Summit Parks, Jim Willie, and Benjamin Fulford. So, I'd like to welcome back the first, all states, including Alaska, Hawaii, the First Nations of Cherokee, Navajo, Hopi, Chickasaw, Mohawk, Apache, First Nation in Pitt River, California, Mohegans, Yakama Nation in Washington State, Potawatomi in the Midwest, Oklahoma, Ojibwe Nation in northern Minnesota, proud people who want peace and justice, Choctaw, Abenaki Tribe, Cheyenne, Massanutten, Pequot, Blackfoot in Montana, Spokane and Coville, Powhatan, Seminoles in Florida, Red Crow Tribe in Kentucky, Salt River Tribe in Arizona, and to welcome back the nations of Canada, England, France, Ireland, Philippines, South Africa, Netherlands, also called Holland, Indonesia, Scotland, Germany, Switzerland, New Zealand, Maldives, Nepal, Norway, Australia, Chile, Thailand, Belgium, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Panama, Guam, U.S. territory, Jamaica, an Icelander living in Spain and other people in Spain, Wales in the UK, Sweden, Italy, Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, Romania, Bermuda, Bahamas, British territories, Morocco, Argentina, Northern Marianas Island, a U.S. territory, Denmark, Bolivia, Uganda, Iceland, Serbia, Bulgaria, Mauritius, a small island nation off of Africa, and the newest, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Poland, Costa Rica, Malta, China, Hungary, Israel, and Finland. So let's get started. I'd like to say thank you to everyone for your words of encouragement and support for my channel. And a special thank you to C.W. Graham in Magnolia, Texas, B. Bartos in Asheboro, North Carolina, and the McCons in Fulford, Texas. Thank you. I have a Patriot subscriber who lives near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, that's near Dayton, Ohio, who says, since 2020, constant air traffic every 20 minutes. Most are cargo, C-17 and C-5s. And we've seen Air Force One many times. And they report the days are longer here. We still have light at 9:45 p.m. at night. Yeah, this is really getting weird with the long days. It's just not logical. Okay, so Simon Parks is reporting in Beforeitsnews that some things are going on. And he was on Beforeitsnews interview by Doug Billings. He's reporting, so Simon Parks is reporting, now President Trump, has ordered arrest and that they are going on. And we'll see that there's a lot of unrest in a lot of nations. Now, he foresees the U.S. being operated by the Joint Chiefs sometime soon, and then it would be turned over to President Trump. So, yeah, many sources have said the military is the way to go, and it'll start out that way. Now, Benjamin Fulford is a Canadian journalist living in Japan, and he's saying the future holds with one, the UN going down, and also NATO. And that many nations, and other sources are saying this too, many nations are going to be leaving NATO soon. Okay. And he's saying that the UN will go from having 5 nations as their security arm, which was the US and Canada, England, Russia, and France. And it's going to 7 nations: Africa, North and South America, Europe, that will include Russia, China, East Asia, that will include everything in Asia outside of China, the Middle East, and the ocean area, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. So we've heard that from other sources also. Now, he's bringing this out. The deep state is selling U.S. weapons, and reports are coming out that many of the Joint Chiefs are complaining that the stockpile of U.S. weapons is being depleted to go to Ukraine. Okay. And Benjamin Fulford is reporting the deep state is currently inside Nigeria, and one group they're killing are Christians, and they want to steal the oil from Nigeria. And he's reporting in China, 25% of the apartments are empty because the rent is too high and the people can't afford it. And in China, the people are rising up and rebelling. Now, this is coming out from Benjamin Fulford, and he's talking about this economist, Neil Keenan. And I had reported in previous videos, because I picked up on the fact that Benjamin Fulford and Jim Woolley both mentioned Neil Keenan probably about a month ago. He apparently was an economist who was outspoken, and he's passed on a few years ago. Passed on. And Benjamin Fulford then is mentioning his name again, and that he had information about U.S. bonds and stocks and other information about people who took bribes from the CCP. Okay. So he's been mentioned again. Now, Benjamin Fulford is also talking about this area, Lake Geneva. It's in the Switzerland area. And it has an underground area that belongs to the deep state. I know the late Kirsten W. reported there were 30,000 shadow CIA agents operating under here. And Benjamin Fulford is reporting that to take this area out will require the U.S. military and the Space Force. And he's reporting he expects Russia to expand the war. I'm assuming that means beyond Ukraine. Okay. Jim Woolley, PhD economist out of Costa Rica, is bringing some information out. Yeah, soon. And it can't be too soon for us. JB will be out, President Trump back. But that correlates to that information that Simon Parks was bringing out, and Jim Woolley also says mass arrests are currently going on inside the U.S. Okay, and he's talking about symbols. And we know recently we saw the Georgia Guidestones go down, and he also is reporting on the obelisk outside of the Vatican is down. And there are cracks in the Washington Monument, and soon 34 buildings on a global basis will be coming down. Now, this is new information Jim Woolley is reporting. And it was Dr. William Mount who brought out the several shadow command centers inside the U.S. One of them at McPherson military base in Atlanta, Georgia. And Jim Woolley is reporting that McPherson in Atlanta, Georgia, had a studio. That was one of the places the JV actor and other alleged White House activities were taking place, was being filmed at this McPherson military base in Atlanta, Georgia. Jim Woolley reports it's been invaded and taken down. And he's saying the other studio in Culver City, California, has been taken down, and there is one left. It's underground in Langley, Virginia. And that was one of the areas that Dr. William Mount also named. So that's going on. So we see that people are rising up in the United States also, and things are happening. Now we have Jim, he's talking about the NATO, as the U.S. generals also are complaining about the depletion of weapons, so many going to Ukraine. It's taking down the security of the U.S. military and NATO. And he's reporting the losses for the Ukraine military is 1,000 soldiers per day, and we have other sources who are bringing this out also. Now, he's bringing this new information out that in Taiwan, they had about 30 biolabs funded by the shadow U.S. government. And he's reporting in about 1 year ago, there was an air fight. And that was between the U.S. military and the Taiwan military versus the CCP plus. And he gave an analogy, putting it in a football score of like 28-3. 28-3 would have been a resounding victory for the Air Force with the U.S. and Taiwan Air Force. Now, we just didn't, it wasn't on mainstream media, was it? So, yeah. Although in the past we keep hearing all these tensions are coming up, but when real battles take place, we're not hearing about them. Okay. Now, Jim Woolley is reporting this. Watch for certain countries. One of them is Germany and Holland, also called the Netherlands, because the people are rising up, and in the Netherlands, they're challenging the parliament. Yeah, I saw something, a couple of members of the Netherlands, also called Holland Parliament, said, where is this order from Davos about taking down the farmers inside the Netherlands, also called Holland? The people are rising up. Also the farmers in Germany, in France. Yeah. And this I had not heard in Estonia. This is one of the presidents that resigned last week. And also something was going on with the government in Lithuania. Okay. Right. And also in Italy, the president resigned. And in Germany, that was Dr. William Mount who brought that out, that it's a double or whatever for Angela Merkel. She's going down. Now, this is new information. I had not heard from another source. And we have Russia, we have Ukraine, we've got this Moldova, and it's got that small area Transnistria. And this is a Russian enclave, actually, and a lot of Russian military are here. And this will be the third land bridge that Russia puts in. And we have Belarus, and we have Poland, we have Slovakia, and some other small countries. And we've got Romania, we've got Hungary, we've got, Moldova. Now, Jim Woolley is bringing this out. Romania, Hungary, and Moldova. The people are in full revolt. So they're not just rising up and having demonstrations. They're taking buildings down or doing something, but that's going on. And we don't hear about it, do we? Not on mainstream media. So people all over the earth are saying no more evil. We want peace and justice and a golden age. Yes, okay. A Mercouris, a London-based journalist, is bringing this up. So let me do you a map. We have, this is Ukraine. We have Luhansk, Donetsk. This is the Donbass area. Odessa, Kherson, Crimea. And we have this front line where all this, it's really getting really, really bad now. So many young soldiers from Ukraine are being killed. But that's war. When you rise up with a gun to shoot someone, well, they have the right to shoot you back. But that's happening. Okay, so in this area, a primary, the final front line will be Izium, Slovenots, and Kramatorsk. Now, Kramatorsk is the headquarters for the Ukraine military in eastern Ukraine. So, in this area, there are some smaller areas, and down here also, like Bakhmut, Soledad, Sivernesk. We're hearing about these locations. And Russia is coming out on multiple fronts, and they're actively working. They currently have a solid land bridge from east Ukraine all the way to Crimea. They're working on a second land bridge through Odessa and a third land bridge to Transnistria, that's in Moldova. So Russia is pushing out, and in the last report I had, they were pushing out in 8 places from that front line. All right. And they are resupplying in Belarus. They are building up all along the border here. and we'll see how that plays in. All right, and so they've taken a small city, Severodonetsk, with a population of 1,000, and then they're going to be moving to a second location called Soledad and Bakhmut, and along with the Luhansk People's Republic Militia and the Donetsk People's Republic Militia. Now, both of these areas were recognized this week by North Korea as independent countries. Okay, so the major area now they're going into is Kherson, and also in central Ukraine. I'll draw this for you. Right here. It's a location called Vinnytsia, and there was a major strike there. I'll tell you about it. And also in this area, Kherson, there was 1,000 Ukrainians killed on July 14. And in this area right here, just a couple of days, and in my last report I was also talking about in this area, I was talking about the information coming out that the U.S. military is in this area just above Kherson. And they were launching the HIMARS, and they launched them at several warehouses and killed civilians. Now, it's being speculated by multiple sources that then Russia retaliated in this area, Vinnytsia, here in central Ukraine. That would have been, today's the 17th, about on the 15th, I believe. And they hit a Ukraine officers club where Ukraine military officers and also Ukraine government officials were meeting with foreign weapons dealers from the West. And sadly, there was some adjacent civilians killed who were adjacent to the military objective of the Ukraine Officers Club. And it's being put out that Russia bombed this Officers Club, took out Ukraine military, took out foreign West weapons dealers and others in retaliation for the U.S. military being inside the U.S., along with Dr. William Manna told us a few weeks ago that it was 10,000 U.S. military inside Ukraine. And then we had other sources that said recently there was an additional coming into Ukraine, like in the last week or two, of 42,000 NATO troops. And they are launching HIMARS inside Ukraine, killing Russian citizens. And they have put these HIMARS, and Russia has detected them on the Ukraine border to fire them into Russia. Russia is retaliating. Okay. Now, from military summary, the U.S. military was testing the HIMARS on the warehouses, and then they're going to target a dam in this area to flood Kherson. Okay. Now, this is coming out from military summary. Also, this new word we've been hearing recently, proxy. And he's saying, a proxy war is Ukraine for U.S. military and NATO. And that's what we're hearing from other sources. Okay. Now, military summary is giving some loss figures, and he's also getting them from Russia and from Ukraine. These are loss figures for Ukraine. So, military summary is saying the Ukraine losses in the last week as reported by Ukraine. And then Ukraine reported 20,000, and then military summary added some numbers he thought was reasonable to make it 25 to 30,000 losses of young Ukraine soldiers. And for what, we ask? Russia is going to overwhelm Ukraine, I believe. All right, so he's talking about on Saturday, July 16th, and the 115th Brigade of Ukraine, 600 were killed. In the 23rd, 200 were killed. That was near Nikolaev, and they took 13 vehicles, Russia. In Severodonetsk, and the 241st Brigade of Ukraine, soldiers are rising up and refusing to fight and retreating. And we understand that water and medicine and food has been cut off from the Ukraine military for quite some time. And we understand this. From military summary, and I believe Alexander Mercouris was also reporting this, that the story put out by the Ukraine Ministry of Defense about raising a 1 million person offensive was just a trick to pull resources of Russia away from a certain area. Now, Larry Johnson, former U.S. CIA for about 24 years, who trained the U.S. military on intel procedures, is giving this information out that the Russian strategy is, when they go into an area, is to hit the command centers, take out vehicles, aircraft, artillery, cut off resupply. You know, they're softening the area before they go in and take it. Now, Gonzalo Lira, he's an American and Chilean journalist who lives in Kharkiv inside Ukraine, says that on July 15, 400 Ukraine military were killed, and that was in that area that Russia bombed and killed also the foreign weapons dealers. All right. Now, Andrei Martyakov, he's a retired Russian military analyst, says that there's a massive move of Russian troops and movement, and they're moving armor and something called Terminators. And they're going, moving everything to in the area of Kramatorsk. So, now, Andrei Martyakov is giving this numbers for the Ukraine near Severodonetsk. The brigade was either the 145th or the 155th, but hundreds were killed. And And Andrei Martyakov is hearing that in Ukraine they are recruiting men 65 and older, as well as men 18 to 65, plus women. And Gonzalo Lira and other sources are confirming, they're hearing confirmation that Russia does have HIMARS and the HIMARS missiles, whether they were delivered to Russia by Russia buying them or Russia captured them, but Russia does have them. Okay, now Gonzalo Lira is putting this forth. After Kramatorsk, we understand will be like a final battle for the Donbass area, and that would be the completion of phase 2 for Russia. Phase 3, Gonzalo Lira is putting forth this, Kiev, and we'll see some other things are developing for Kiev. Now, Alexander Mercouris is saying what's taking place in the Russian parliament is a putting together of the final peace offering that will be presented to Ukraine and NATO, and that it is sensed the window is closing for negotiations. And Larry Johnson puts forth that Russia currently is in that area above Kherson, but they are going to move west to take Odessa and Transnistria. And that Larry Johnson is hearing the 1st of April. The U.S. military joint chiefs were saying things like they hoped Russia would run out of missiles soon because the U.S. weapons stockpile was being depleted. So, we're hearing that. Now, Alexander Mercouris says that he's reporting that the Ukraine Minister of Defense actually came out and made a public statement that raising the 1 million person military was a miscommunication, a misspeak. Okay. And that, he's talking about the Russian bombing and Vinnytsia that killed inadvertently civilians, and that was a sad event connected with Russia taking out a military objective, and that the U.S. military was there also. The Ukraine military was there, the U.S. military was there, and foreign weapons dealers were there in the building where Russia bombed the building. And it was retaliation by Russia for the U.S. military inside Ukraine bombing warehouses near Kherson with HIMARS. This is coming to Alexander Mercouris from multiple sources. And he's also confirming Russia has been sold and they are in physical possession of HIMARS and missiles and also French weapons that are new. Okay, now this is new information. He's saying the U.S. military is giving 18 HIMARS or placing 18 HIMARS in Estonia, which is just a cover to then move the HIMARS from Estonia to Ukraine. And these have a range of 300 kilometers. Okay. And he's saying that the number of HIMARS inside Ukraine now is 8 to 18 plus 9 M270s. And Russia has detected HIMARS inside Ukraine that are close to the Russian border. Now, Alexander Mercouris is saying the Russian Minister of Defense, this I found surprising. The Russian Minister of Defense visits East Ukraine, the Donbass area, and that's to meet with the two generals who in 2 weeks took Lysychansk, that area. Generals Lafin and Suravanan. And Russia is going to intensify its military operation near Donbass and move further inside Ukraine. And currently they are circling these areas in anticipation of storming these areas in the next few days. Bakhmut, Soledad, Siversk. And Russia is in the process of making the final peace offering to Ukraine, which they expect Ukraine to reject. And this is coming out from multiple sources, including Alexander Mercouris, that the president of Serbia and the president of Brazil have been given the details of the final peace offering by the Russian government. And both the president of Serbia and the president of Brazil expect Ukraine to reject the offer. And then the president of Serbia states, when that happens, all hell will break loose. So we can reasonably anticipate that this big buildup of Russia on multiple borders with Ukraine, it's going to bring forth a few things. Now, Israeli News Live, Stephen Ben-Nun, formerly with the CIA, now has a ministry and receives information regularly, updates from the Pentagon, says there are Polish troops inside Ukraine. Okay, now, Military Summary is bringing this out, as are other sources. A few days ago, and this is coming out on the 16th of July, the U.S. Embassy in Kiev said to American citizens inside Ukraine, leave by the end of July. And now we understand from other sources that that was Alexander Mercouris. The U.S. Embassy in Kiev is currently moving documents from Kiev to Lviv. So I would say the U.S. Embassy inside Kiev reasonably expects the Russians to be there soon. And we have this inside Severodonetsk, the Ukraine retreat. They lose 500 soldiers, many vehicles, and they're moving to Soledad. And Military Summary is saying Kramatorsk, the headquarters of the Ukraine military in eastern Ukraine. Russia to take in August. And that Ukraine realizes this, and they're currently prepping fortifications inside Kramatorsk. Now, in the Bakhmut area, the nationalist group called Azov for Ukraine, which actively practices the philosophy of World War II Germany, has lost 300 soldiers and 30 vehicles. In South Ukraine, the Ukraine has lost from the 45th Brigade 70 soldiers and equipment. And Alexander Mercouris is also reporting, as did Military Summary on the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, telling American citizens to be out of Ukraine by the end of July. And it's Alexander Mercouris who's saying Kiev is transferring documents. The U.S. Embassy is transferring documents from Kiev to Lviv. So let me draw you a map. So here's a map. And this is Luhansk, Donetsk. This is the Donbass area. Crimea, Odessa, Kherson. The Izium, Solness, Kramatorsk, the final battle here. Smaller battles are going on here. Here is the Dam-pwr River. Here's Kiev. Here's Lviv. And it's Lviv. It's believed that Poland would like to have, because many of the population there is culturally Polish and they speak Polish. So the U.S. Embassy is going to be closing and moving documents to Lviv. Now, in Belarus, and that's the leader is Lukashenko, whose name God gave to me about 8 months ago when I was taking a short nap. Lukashenko. So God knows who the leader is. Well, he knows the leader of all countries, but I don't know why he brought that up. But Belarus. In Belarus, Russia has right on the border, has put troops, and they're ready to, we believe, come in here as soon as the peace deal is voided out. Now, we understand in this area, we have reports that nukes and HIMARS by the U.S. military have been placed in this area that can then fire into Russia. So, a lot's going on. The war is heating up, and you know, there's multiple sources that we had that from the Russian parliament a few days ago, that all Ukraine citizens can become Russian citizens. So it appeared likely that Russia was going to take all of Ukraine. So now let's move ahead to sci-fi. And this is Stephen Ben-Nun, Israeli News Live. Okay, so Stephen and his wife recently, and I was correct on guessing, in a meeting in California, and he was using night vision goggles. He could see a lot of the UFOs in the area of Dulce, New Mexico. Now, and he's talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, and the Bible talks about strange flesh. And he believes that was referring to the fallen angels. And he's bringing this up, that the real reason the U.S. military went into Iraq was to recover the body of Nimrod, and I reported on that months ago, based on information from Stephen, the U.S. military had secured the body of Nimrod. They were trying to resurrect the body and put a soul back into it. And they had it stored underground in Denver, Colorado. Now we understand that the body of Nimrod has gone to Israel. Well, to the nation. We don't know where Israel has taken the body, but their people are actively trying to get a soul to go back into the physical body of Nimrod. And the reason they wanted the physical body of Nimrod and the memories is because Nimrod had the DNA plus that could interpret some kind of symbols, and I'm speculating maybe it's related to those ark ships, which we understand all have symbols in them, and you have to be DNA, a certain type of DNA to interpret the symbols and also to relate to the ship and operate the ship. So that's going on. I know it is sci-fi, but it's actually real. All right, so yeah, and it's Israel took over the project, and it's somehow related also to Egypt and the pyramids. And Stephen is bringing this out that Satan himself is a reptilian. Okay, so yeah, that's going on with sci-fi. Now we'll move on to heads up. So what's going on now? We have heads up. Okay, suspicious observers, a science-based space weather program, is talking about in Cascadia. So here's the U.S. Here's our west coast. We have Canada. Right here is the Cascadia subduction area. So we have a tectonic plate area here. And Ben Davidson with Suspicious Observers is saying that fluids inside the earth are heating up, and that's going to impact the Cascadia area. Now in the fall of 2020, that's when God said to me, pay attention to the tectonic edge plates because the earth is heating up. There's some kind of celestial object coming in that's impacting earth, putting pressure on the earth, heating the earth up from the inside, and so the magma is rising along the, God said, pay attention to the edges of the tectonic plates. So now Ben Davidson is bringing this confirmation for what God said in the fall of 2020. So yeah, that's going on. Do we have to be concerned about that? No, we have a God who is living, who created all, who's in charge, and he's definitely on the move. Now, Dabu 77 is bringing this out. A nuke warning sign has been placed in the malls of New Jersey. Now, just a few days ago, we heard about there was on TV in New York City a public service announcement, what to do in the case of a nuke attack. Get inside, and stay tuned. So Dabu picked up on this, and I agree with him. It's very strange. Suddenly in New Jersey, they're putting up signs in the malls what to do in the case of a nuke attack. Is this the deep state prepping us for something that could happen? And we know that Stephen Beforeitsnews had brought that information out from the Pentagon, that there was some kind of dirty nuke somewhere in New York City. That was cloaked, and they're trying to locate it. Okay. I'm just saying, this appears to be a shadow part of our government trying to scare people, I think. So, yeah. And we know God is in charge, and we do have, and Gene Decoded brought that out also from the Space Force. I mean, they can detect anything that's nuke or radiation or any other conventional type weapon immediately, like within 1 minute, once it isn't cloaked. So, yeah, we have God and great military people right on top of this. So, now let's move ahead to look ahead, because we want some great news. We're ready for that. All right. So, look ahead. Now, ShariRaye, she's a gospel singer, writer, news person from Texas. Sherry is saying that, she's hearing things that the economy is going to be worse than what happened in 2008. Now, part of this Jassara process will be in the U.S. and Europe. Our dollar will go down. The stock market will crash. This won't last long. You should have some cash and food and water, medicine stored up. Okay, 2 to 3 weeks, she says. And she's saying that, President Putin is actively involved in this process in Ukraine. That's with President Putin, President Trump, President Z, that Jim Woolley calls TPX group, going after actively currently now in global many nations, individuals are being arrested for crimes against humanity. All right. And so now, Judy Byington is bringing this out. Judy knows a lot of stuff. And some of this stuff was new to me. So Judy Byington, she's on Beforeitsnews. She also has a website, so you can just do a search for Judy Byington. I'll then pull up her website. Okay. So Europe is at a 20-year low for their economy. And we know that these sanctions against Russia for oil and gas has really hurt Europe and impacted their economy. And she's saying that according to the sanctions, Russia is to cut off gas to Europe in 10 days. So I think a lot of the people in many European nations are rising up against their government, saying, stop this. Okay, she's talking about Judy is saying the Georgia Guidestones were taken out with bombs, and that the security video has disappeared. And she's talking about the many leaders recently in the last couple of weeks who've been resigning. In England, Boris Johnson; in Italy; in Sri Lanka; in France. Well, Macron, it's coming out about the election, and so the people are rising up and demonstrating in France. Okay, in Germany, and we know the Angela Merkel double is stepping down. In many other nations in Europe, the president of Estonia, we understand, resigned. In Japan, we had that assassination of Abiy. The president of Lebanon, we understand, has resigned. The Yemen government is changing. Also, some changes and people rising up in Canada and in the United States, too. Now, she's talking about London, Boris Johnson resigning, London bridges going down. And please, we would like to hear this soon, an announcement that the Queen has passed on, because we know that happened, in 2019, for real? Okay, now, this is new to me that Judy is bringing out, that in 2021, the U.S. military transferred $22 trillion worth of gold from Mount Cheyenne in Colorado to England. And we know that the U.S. military and the Space Force had collected like $1 trillion worth of gold underneath the Vatican and other places. And it was stored in Colorado. And then it was supposed to be given back to all the nations from which they could determine it came. So, and also underneath the Vatican, CERN, yeah, they had a supercomputer. Now, this is new information to me, and I'll detail it for you. So under the Vatican, you know, we heard months ago that the U.S. military and the Space Force had gone underneath the Vatican, and they had tunnels going all the way to Israel. So this is coming out that under the Vatican, they had super computers that could hook up to that shadow CIA group underneath Lake Geneva in Switzerland. And then they would go to 11 CIA locations on a global basis, one being in Langley, Virginia. And this is a location we heard from Dr. William Mount was one of the shadow U.S. government locations. And then from there, it would go to 150 Tier 2 locations. So we see a deep state system of communication. All right. Now, Judy is saying that different groups were associated with this, like the Masons and the certain groups of the Masons. We know that many lower level Masons all over the world are just good people who are not aware of, as you go up the levels, you really get into something evil. Okay. Such groups as Jesuits, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers. Okay. Now, she's talking about Abe, the former prime minister in Japan. We know was recently assassinated. We don't know if his death was faked or he was actually assassinated. All right, so Judy is saying that Abe was affiliated with the Alliance, the White Hats, and he had information regarding Fukushima, and I've covered that in previous videos. Plus invasion plans for China by North Korea, Russia, Taiwan, Japan, and the U.S. Okay. And Judy is bringing this out. The U.S. mainstream media is putting forth questions about JB and the Hunter Biden laptop. Now, Judy is saying the Venezuela Foreign Minister Carlos Faria is saying that what's going on in Ukraine is a proxy, that's our word again, war for the shadow NATO and the shadow US. And that Russia is there fighting, affiliated with the alliance, to free all of humanity. Okay, so now, Benjamin Fulford is bringing this out, that we see progress going on globally. We see Boris Johnson resigning in England and things going on in France, Sri Lanka, Israel, Italy, Japan, Germany, and the Netherlands, also called Holland. Yeah, the people are rising up. And so what Benjamin Fulford is talking about is a golden age of prosperity and peace. And we say, bring it, Lord. We are ready. So here's a short prayer. This is a cleansing prayer modeled by Gene Decode. We remove permission to be in us, on us, around us, on earth, off world, any dimension, any person, place, or thing not of God, any assemblage of fallen angels, AI, nanobot, and other forms of tech, any non-terrestrial species, excuse me, spirit, thought form, operating system, genetic overlay, past, present, and future. And we say, get away from us in the name of Jesus. Now, this is a short prayer based on the Passion Translation of Isaiah chapter 27. And the title of the prayer is The Sword of the Lord. In that day the Lord Yah will wield his mighty sword and punish the serpent. He will slay the dragon of the sea. The Lord watches over his vineyard and protects it day and night. And the Lord says, I will burn up the briars and thorns that are in and among my vineyard. And let the branches of my vineyard cling to me for protection. And I will keep them safe and secure from all adversity. My vineyard, the Lord says, will bud, bloom, and cover the earth with the fragrant fruit of peace. And we say thank you, Father, Son, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, and the Holy Spirit. And I say to my family and friends, remain steady out there, continue to pray. God is in charge, and he is on the move. I love you, and I'll see you soon.